This is a rocket I built. It's powered by citric acid and baking soda. Today, I'm going to show you how it works and how to easily build one for yourself. Let's get right into it. You've probably heard about the baking soda and vinegar reactions. You mix the two together and it releases a bunch of gas. You can add soap and food coloring to make sort of fake lava, or do a variety of other cool science experiments. But we're not interested in making bubbles. No. We want to launch a rocket. You can use vinegar for this, and it sort of works, but the reaction's pretty weak, so sometimes the rocket won't even go off. Besides, vinegar smells bad, so we need an alternative. We could use citric acid. It comes in this powdered form, so we can make even higher concentrations. Let's try it. We got 3 different concentrations of citric acid versus vinegar, all with the same amount of baking soda. 3, 2, 1, go. As you can see, the citric acid is much more reactive, meaning our rocket will go off sooner and with more power. Anyway, now that we have our fuel, we need to build the rocket itself. But first, we need to understand just a little bit more about how rockets work. They're based on Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For example, if I push on a wall, it pushes back, which is why I don't fall through it. Similarly, if I throw a ball, it sort of throws me back too. Except it doesn't. But why? Remember, it's an equal force. Meaning, I get pushed on with the force required to move 1 tennis ball. And considering I weigh as much as 1,600 tennis balls, well, needless to say, there's not enough force to move me anywhere. What is that about force? How do we calculate it? And more importantly, how does it apply to rockets? To calculate force, you use this simple equation. You take the mass of the object, times the speed you are accelerating it to, and you get the force it exerts. But how does this apply to rockets? Well, rockets work by creating a high-pressure gas inside of a chamber. This gas is then allowed to escape through a nozzle, and since the exhaust is pretty light since it's made of gas, nozzles are designed to make it accelerate to really high speeds, like really high speeds. The exhaust then exerts the same force on the rocket, and off you go. Our little citric acid rocket works fairly similarly, although it's much less powerful. Now that we know how rockets work, let's go build one. Okay, so we are ready to build our rocket. As far as materials go, you'll need a soda bottle, then the bottle cap. You also need like a syringe for cough syrup and the plunger that goes with it. And then you'll need like a little section of an old sponge. And then I'll show you what this is used for. You might not need like actually an old sponge, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then you also need some epoxy. 5-minute epoxy should work fine. And then you'll also probably need like a drill and some sandpaper, stuff like that. I'll show you all that when we come to it. First thing you're gonna do is take your craft knife and cut the top off of the syringe. I already have one cut off here, so I'll just use this. So basically you're just gonna cut the top off of this with a knife, and you should get something that looks like this. Okay, so now that you have your syringe, we're gonna turn our attention to the little plunger thing. So what you're gonna do is push it in until it's all the way at the top, but it isn't coming out the other side. All right, and then we're just gonna take our knife and sort of cut off this little extra piece here. All right, that came off. And so basically the idea here is we will fill this section with baking soda and water. And so like the plunger will be held in here. And then that's also what the sponge is for, to cap the other side. And then we can push down like so, and it'll push the baking soda into the rocket. And then we can just back off, and when the pressure's built up, it'll push this out, and off we go. Now we need to prepare the bottle cap. Now this is a little bit difficult. So I used a drill, a slightly smaller drill bit than this, and a Dremel tool to sort of carve out this hole. And that's what worked best for me. As you can see, that fits nicely. But whatever tools you have available, whether it's like drill, a file, like some sandpaper, maybe like a soldering iron, because you can melt the plastic. With that, just whatever you do, be careful, because they're kind of small and they can slip out of your hands. So like maybe wear gloves or something, so you don't accidentally hurt yourself. But basically, you just want a hole in the top of the bottle cap that is as big as this syringe. So see, you can fit, looks like that. Okay, now what we're gonna do is mix up the epoxy. You don't need a whole lot, but it is a good idea to sort of sand the surface, just like a little bit of sandpaper. That helps the epoxy hold on a little bit better. Okay, so you're gonna mix up the epoxy and apply a thin layer of it to the top of the bottle cap. Like so, make sure you cover the whole thing. We don't want any air gaps. And we're gonna take another little bit and put it on the syringe, which is also sanded. And then just take the 2 pieces, line them up, just like that. Try to make sure the inside is lined up. Okay, and then I'm gonna take a little bit of paper towel and just clean the inside, make sure there's not too much left over. Okay, So now that that's lined up, we can take the rest of our epoxy and just put it on there to try to help with structural support. All right, then we can move this out of the way, and honestly, that is most of the rocket done. So when this dries, you can just screw it on to your soda bottle and it should work just fine. I have these 2 pieces of PVC pipe that I use as launch rails, and I have a little launch stand. I'm also gonna put on some fins to provide some stabilization, and I'm also gonna try launching it just off the flat ground, and we're gonna see if that works. Okay, so here's the rocket done. I got the fins on it as well as the guide rails. This is my sort of launching station over here. Okay, so now we're ready to fuel the rocket. So the first step, take the nozzle and the syringe, and we're just gonna put this in just like that and fill it up all the way to the top with water like so. Then using a funnel, we're gonna put 1 tablespoon of baking soda into the nozzle. Now you might need like a straw or a stick or something to sort of poke it down in there, and it'll kind of pour the water out. But what this is doing is making sure the baking soda is sort of in almost a liquid form, so that way it'll mix better and won't clog up the nozzle. All right, once this is full, you can take your little piece of sponge and stick it in the hole on the top of the nozzle, and then wash it out with a little bit of water. And as you can see, we have the sponge blocking it, so when we set our rocket down on the ground, it won't go off because the sponge is keeping the citric acid from getting to the baking soda. And then we're gonna take 1 teaspoon of citric acid and pour it into the rocket. You can add more or less citric acid, but I've found this is a pretty good ratio and doesn't waste too much. Then you're gonna pour some water into the bottle till it's about halfway full. Then just mix that around. Then just kind of swirl the bottle around for a few seconds to get, and then you can put the nozzle on the top, just like so. All right, we're ready to go. Let's do a test launch just to see what happens. Let's go. That was definitely a success. Now let's add some fins. At first, I wanted to have some bigger fins so I could just launch it off the ground without needing a launch rail, but unfortunately it was just falling over, so I made some smaller fins, and unfortunately I'll be having to use a launch rod for the rest of the video. But anyway, back to the launches. Maybe I should use more citric acid. Should I add less water? Should I just use vinegar? Oh, okay, I kind of saw that one coming. Maybe I could cut down the sponge so it doesn't block up the exit as much. Let's try that. Success! See? I knew I was onto something. All right, let's do that one more time. Obviously, we have some problems with consistency, but overall, I think the project was still a success. I had fun and learned a lot along the way as well. Obviously, there's lots of room for improvement, and I'll definitely return to this project in the future. But anyway, that's all I have for this episode, so thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.